King Charles did not summon the press. He did not stand before cameras. There was no trumpet, no grand proclamation, and no warning from Buckingham Palace. Instead, behind a closed door, the king placed his name on a secret document and quietly stripped Camilla of the final ceremonial honour still uniquely attached to her position. One signature, one sealed instrument. And by the time the palace understood what Charles had done, the decision could no longer be emotionally undone. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles sat alone after the room fell silent. He read Camilla's name twice, tightened his fingers around the pen, then set it down as though the words had become too heavy. The confidential royal instrument, a formal document through which the sovereign gives a private royal decision, household force, removed her permanently as keeper of the Queen's personal standard. That role meant she could personally receive, hold, and represent the monarch's private household flag during intimate family ceremonies. It carried almost no constitutional power, yet to Charles and Camilla, it meant acceptance, confidence, and entry into the family's private circle. When he finally signed, the monarch did not look at his waiting private secretary. He pushed the paper forward and said nothing. Camilla felt the blow before she understood the wording. Sitting alone, she listened as the notice was read and insisted there had to be a mistake. Then the explanation continued. Her ceremonial privilege had not been paused. It had been terminated, and a permanent clause blocked any automatic return through reconciliation, a household change, or even a private verbal request from Charles. The Queen Consort stopped interrupting. She stared down, drew one breath, and asked whether her husband had signed it personally. The answer was yes. She asked nothing else. That confirmation turned royal language into personal rejection. William learned only after the signature was complete. The prince read the summary and immediately understood what his father had done. Charles had kept the decision secret until no one could argue, soften, or delay it. The future king felt shock, but beneath it came suspicion. His father had not acted suddenly. The document was too precise, the permanence clause too deliberate. Every possible reversal had been considered. Then fear settled over the family. Charles had been preparing this for weeks. Camilla's reaction suggested she already knew which moment had pushed him beyond hesitation. To understand why one ceremonial privilege could leave Camilla so shaken, the palace first had to confront what Charles, William, and the Queen Consort each believed that honour truly represented. The document may have carried Charles's signature, but the pain inside it belonged to three people. For the king, it was a decision he had resisted. For Camilla, it was a personal rejection disguised in ceremonial language. And for William, it was another reminder that private wounds inside a royal family can become matters of succession, loyalty, and national consequence. They were looking at the same decision. None of them saw the same truth. Camilla sat, with the folded instrument resting on her lap, touching one corner again and again without opening it. The instrument was the signed royal document that had ended her ceremonial privilege, and its meaning cut deeper, because Charles had spent years defending her place beside him. The Queen Consort had survived public hostility, family tension, and judgment with the monarch at her side. Now the same man who had protected her had removed the final household honour that made her feel personally trusted. She did not feel reassigned, she felt shut out. Charles carried that weight into a private library meeting with William. The prince understood why such honours mattered. Public titles could survive scandal because they belonged to the formal structure of the crown, but private household privileges existed only while personal confidence remained alive. The king stood near the table, avoided his son's eyes, and finally admitted the signature had been harder than it should have been. William paused before answering. He told his father that difficulty did not make a decision wrong. Charles gave no reply, but the future king noticed something disturbing in the way he spoke. William heard the honour described only in the past tense. Charles did not say it was being removed. He spoke as though it had already died long before the document was signed. The prince suddenly understood that his father had emotionally ended Camilla's privilege weeks earlier. The pen had merely formalised a decision already settled inside him. Camilla discovered another detail that deepened the wound. She asked whether Anne, Catherine, or another royal woman would receive the standard next. A household sage answered carefully. No immediate successor had been named. The Queen Consort went still. That meant no one had been elevated over her. The decision had been written for one purpose only, to remove her. Then memory became dangerous. Charles had not reached this point without a trigger. William knew it. Camilla feared it. And somewhere in the weeks before the secret signature, one private ceremony, one decision, and one brutal sentence had changed the marriage completely. And when those present began looking back, nearly every path led to the same evening, the night of the private Windsor family remembrance. Royal decisions rarely begin on the day they are signed. They begin in pauses, unfinished conversations, and moments everyone dismisses until it is too late. Weeks before Charles removed Camilla's final honour, the family gathered at Windsor for a private remembrance ceremony. There were no television cameras and no public speeches. Yet one conversation after that ceremony became the point of no return. The moment Charles stopped asking whether a problem existed and began deciding what he would do about it, Camilla had expected the evening to follow its usual quiet order. But the hours stretched and her patience thinned. The Windsor family remembrance ceremony was a private family observance, honouring royal memory away from public ceremony, and the Queen's personal standard, the monarch's private household flag, had been placed in her ceremonial care. Charles had not formally closed the gathering, which meant the standard was supposed to remain. Still, the Queen Consort leaned toward a household officer and told him to remove it. William heard enough to understand the instruction was deliberate. The prince said nothing, but he knew why the rule mattered. The privilege existed as a sign of personal trust, not public rank. Charles noticed the absence almost immediately. Later, he asked Camilla why the standard had disappeared before his closing words. She did not apologise. Instead, she told him the family could not keep living according to the emotions of the past. The king went completely still. He had defended her for years, yet that sentence struck at something deeper than protocol. The monarch asked her to repeat it. Camilla did. Then she left, still frustrated, unaware that the words had changed the room. William remained behind with his father. The future king initially refused to criticise her, but Charles asked one direct question. Did she know the standard was not meant to be removed? The prince hesitated, then answered, yes. Neither man forgot that answer afterward. His father lowered his eyes. No anger followed. That silence frightened William even more. Charles acted quietly after that night. Through a documented household request sent to his private office, he ordered the old rules governing the honour and studied whether the privilege could be ended permanently. He did not demand an apology. He did not threaten Camilla. The king simply began examining how to close the door. Camilla learned much later that William had been present for that decisive exchange. She began to believe he had helped turn any painful marital dispute into permanent punishment. Suspicion hardened. Resentment followed. That suspicion would soon bring Camilla and William into the same room. But it was Charles who entered before either of them could control what happened next. Camilla did not need another briefing. She wanted an answer from William. By the time the prince entered the private drawing room, she was already standing beside the table with the sealed instrument in front of her. There were no aides between them, no private secretaries to soften a sentence. Then she asked the question that had been building since the moment she learned Charles had signed. Did you tell him to do this? William stopped before reaching the table. He knew why she had demanded the meeting, and avoiding the Queen Consort would only make the fracture worse. The sealed instrument, the formal royal document carrying Charles's permanent decision, rested between them untouched. Camilla accused the prince of influencing his father and told him that old family pain had always shaped the way he judged her. William's jaw tightened. Still, he let her finish. She wanted anger from him. Instead, she received silence. William finally answered with brutal control. He had never asked Charles to remove the honour. The future king said that plainly. But when his father questioned him after the Windsor remembrance, he had been asked whether Camilla had knowingly ended the ceremony early. The prince refused to lie. He told the truth. She pushed a chair back sharply and stared at him. Honesty can still be used as a weapon, the Queen Consort said. William did not deny that truth could wound. He only answered that protecting her with a lie would have wounded his father instead. Charles entered before the argument could deepen. He had heard raised voices from the adjoining corridor and closed the door himself. The king looked first at Camilla, then at William, and said the decision belonged to him alone. She immediately turned on her husband. Why had he not confronted her before signing? The monarch's answer landed harder than the accusation. Charles had confronted her 3 times, not through formal meetings or documented warnings, but in private conversations between husband and wife after Windsor. Each time, the king said he had tried to explain why the shortened ceremony had hurt him. Each time, he believed Camilla had defended the decision instead of understanding the wound beneath it. She stared at him, stunned. William remained silent because suddenly the argument was no longer about his influence. Camilla looked directly at Charles and asked the question neither man expected. Was the honour removed because of Windsor, or because someone inside the family had already decided I could no longer be trusted? The king hesitated, because behind Charles's painful silence stood a deeper reality. The king had not made his decision in an emotional vacuum, and several powerful voices had forced him to examine what royal trust actually meant. Camilla believed William stood behind the decision. The truth was more uncomfortable. Charles had listened to no single person. He had spent days moving through a private circle of conversations, hearing the same concern expressed in different words. Yet the final authority remained his, and that made the burden heavier, not lighter. At the centre of the process sat a king who could command a household with one signature, but could not prevent that signature from hurting his own wife. Charles met William and Princess Anne separately, refusing to turn the question into a trial of Camilla. He did not ask whether she deserved punishment. The king asked whether a personal ceremonial honour could survive once the trust beneath it had been damaged. The keeper's honour was a private privilege held only through the sovereign's confidence, meaning marriage, rank, and years of service could not automatically protect it. That mattered because the symbol was personal. Keeping it without belief would turn ceremony into performance. Anne listened carefully before answering. The Princess Royal told her brother that removing one symbolic honour did not erase Camilla's marriage or public position, but she warned that preserving a privilege after confidence had disappeared would create pretense at the heart of the household. Charles removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. He admitted every option felt like a statement about his wife, even though the instrument described only a household decision. Anne saw the pain immediately. She also saw that he had already moved further than he admitted. William offered no recommendation. The prince told his father that the final signature had to remain Charles's choice. If the monarch cannot later look at Camilla and say that honestly, then he should not sign. The king studied his son for several seconds before quietly thanking him for not making the decision easier. The future king understood the meaning. His father was not looking for encouragement. He was looking for resistance. Then Anne noticed the draft. Charles had already prepared language permanently terminating the honour before the private consultations were complete. The Princess Royal realised he was not asking anyone for permission. The king was testing whether William, Anne, or the old ceremonial rules could give him one reason powerful enough to stop. No one did. Camilla's household began receiving instructions almost immediately after the signature. Her name disappeared from ceremonial distribution schedules. Private standard arrangements were redirected. The Queen Consort had not yet felt the full consequence, but the machinery had already moved. By the following morning, the secret decision was no longer merely ink on royal paper. It had begun removing Camilla from rituals she had once assumed would always be hers. The first consequence arrived without an argument. His morning schedule contained a private household commemoration, the kind of event where the Queen's personal standard would once have been delivered into her ceremonial care. She waited. The appointed time came. A clock marked the quarter hour, but the standard never arrived. That was when the meaning of Charles's signature became real, not inside a legal sentence, but in the empty space where an old ritual should have begun. Camilla remained ready and asked an aide whether the standard had been delayed. The Queen's personal standard was the monarch's private household flag, used in intimate royal observances as a symbol of direct personal trust. The aide lowered her voice and explained that no delivery was scheduled. Household officers had removed Camilla from the keeper's ceremonial distribution list, meaning future standards would return directly to the sovereign's household rather than pass into her care. The Queen Consort stared at the closed doorway. Of course, she said. The loss cut deeper because nothing else had vanished. Camilla still had public duties. She was still Charles's wife. Her wider royal position remained. Yet that narrowness made the decision crueler in her mind because the king had not dismantled her life. He had selected one symbol and removed it. Everyone who understood the ritual also understood what that symbol represented. Charles found her alone later. He expected anger, but she did not shout. Camilla told him the missing standard hurt more than reading the instrument. For 1 second that morning, she had forgotten what he had done. Then the empty schedule reminded her. The monarch struggled to answer, and his silence almost reopened the argument. Camilla reached for an old handwritten note. She explained during their private conversation that Charles had sent it after she first performed the ceremonial role. The Queen Consort placed the note beside the new instrument. Years earlier, he had thanked her for understanding why the standard mattered to him. Charles read his own words and visibly faltered. The king admitted the memory was real. Then he said the decision was real too. He would not reverse the order because guilt had returned to the room. Camilla finally stopped speaking about William. She looked at her husband and asked for one conversation without royal titles, household rules, or ceremony. Not as king and queen consort, but as husband and wife. That request led to the one conversation no courtier could witness and no document could control. A private exchange in which Charles and Camilla finally faced the wound beneath the ceremony. For days, every conversation had been crowded by titles, rules, and old injuries. Then Charles did something deceptively simple. He dismissed the waiting aides and closed the door. Camilla remained seated. No document lay between them this time. No standard, no private secretary. In the silence that followed, husband and wife confronted the truth. Neither ceremony nor anger had allowed them to say it before. The honour had not been destroyed by one broken rule. It had been destroyed by what that moment revealed. Charles asked for one condition before they began. They would not discuss William, Anne, household officers, or legal wording. The king wanted the conversation to remain between them because the wound beneath the decision was personal. He explained that the standard had always represented continuity, memory, and respect for private family grief. Those rituals mattered because they gave the family a way to hold painful history without turning it into public performance. Camilla had known that meaning. Her decision to remove the standard early hurt because, in his eyes, she had chosen convenience over something she knew he carried deeply. Camilla finally admitted what anger had hidden. She had grown exhausted by ceremonies built around losses she had never experienced in the same way. The Queen Consort told Charles she often felt trapped inside memories, where she would always remain an outsider, no matter how many years passed. She had not removed the standard because it meant nothing. She had removed it because she was tired of feeling judged by emotions she could never fully share. Charles listened, then answered quietly. He had never expected her to feel his history exactly as he did. The monarch had only expected her to respect the moments when that history still mattered. Camilla began to cry and admitted her words after the remembrance had been deliberately cruel. She had wanted to wound him because she felt wounded herself. Then Charles revealed the hardest truth during their private conversation. He made the termination permanent because he feared his own guilt. The king knew that after enough sadness, he might restore the honour simply to ease the pain between them. The permanence clause protected him from making a future decision based on weakness instead of trust. Camilla stopped fighting. She hated the decision, but she understood it. She did not ask for the honour back. Instead, she asked whether Charles still believed their marriage had a future beyond royal ceremony. The king took her hand and said yes. By evening, what Charles and Camilla had finally understood in private was being transformed into a national headline neither of them could control.